Happy Sunday. Welcome back to Bible study. This is week 14, I think. I really am not even sure. Please hold. Yes, this is week 14. We're talking about Judges 8 through 21, Ruth 1 through 4, and 1 Samuel 1 through 3. Judges is honestly such a hot mess, but we finished it this week. If you need to catch up, no worries. Just go to the top of my TikTok page, catch up. We're ready for you whenever you're ready. So we're going to finish talking about Gideon this week, just real quick. Basically, after everything we talked about last week, the Israelites ask Gideon if he wants to rule over them as king. Basically, thank you for saving us from Midian. Do you want to be king? And Gideon's like, no, but I do want each of you to give me gold, which he basically uses to make an idol. No, Gideon. So he makes himself a garment that only the high priests are supposed to be wearing. He's not supposed to be wearing it. And the Israelites all fall back into idolatry, just keeping this vicious cycle of behaviors alive. So we had such high hopes for Gideon, but unfortunately, he ends up just reverting back there in the end. Anyways, so after Gideon's death, one of his sons gets power hungry, unalives 69 out of his 70 siblings. The youngest one escapes. God ultimately brings judgment upon him. He's unalived by a woman, dropping a millstone on his head, blah, blah, blah. So Judges is just full of all this drama because the Israelites just continue on this vicious cycle of falling into sin, hitting rock bottom, crying out to God for help, but ultimately not changing whatsoever. So we just go on and on and on. It doesn't matter what judge God sends. The Israelites are just not snapping out of it. So then we come to our final judge, Samson. And Samson is basically chosen before birth to help Israel. An angel of the Lord appears to his mother to tell her she's about to have a son who will save Israel, raise him up under the Nazirite vows. If you remember about the Nazirite vows, it involves just abstaining from a bunch of things. You can't drink wine, you can't cut your hair, you can't touch unalived bodies, etc., etc. And it's meant to set you apart in holiness. So Samson is raised under these vows, and he's also given superhuman strength, which he uses to help the Israelites out. But anyways, Samson is very flawed, and he breaks all of his Nazirite vows repeatedly. He marries outside of Israel, he drinks wine, he touches unalived bodies, etc. While his pagan Philistine lover betrays him. He's captured, blinded, they cut his hair, he loses his power. He's just down bad. So he ends up calling out to God and calls him by his name Yahweh for the first time. God answers Samson, basically giving him the strength to knock over this pagan temple that he's being held in. And Samson just sacrifices himself. He kills thousands of Philistines, but he also goes down in the process. But after Samson, shocker, the Israelites hit rock bottom again and are just living in complete and utter sin. So what the heck is the whole point of Judges? Judges basically shows us time and time again what happens when personal desires trump divine law. No one fears God. People are just doing what they want and what they think is best. The very last line in Judges, which is 21:25, it says, "In those days Israel had no king. Everyone did as they saw fit." No king, including God. No one fears God. Everyone's just doing what they see fit. And the world is absolute chaos and anarchy. It sounds a little familiar. So any hoodles. Now we go to Ruth. And Ruth is like a little side quest happening during Judges. And I love the story of Ruth. So basically, Naomi, she's a woman from Bethlehem. Her family, however, goes to Moab because of a famine that is happening in Bethlehem. And her sons marry pagan Moabite women. Well, she loses her husband, she loses her sons. She's left with just her two daughter-in-laws, who are both Moabite women. So Naomi hears, hey, the Lord is helping out with the famine in Bethlehem. So she's like, I'm going to go back to Bethlehem. I'm going to leave Moab. So she tries to get her daughter-in-laws to stay with their pagan families. Her one daughter-in-law does. However, Ruth, her second daughter-in-law, refuses to leave Naomi's side. She's like, I'm going to trust in you and your God, and I'm going to come with you to Bethlehem. So long story short, Ruth starts working in this field that belongs to Naomi's family member, Boaz. Boaz is like a rich landowner, big in society. And then you have Ruth, who is an immigrant from Moab. She is a pagan widow. Like Boaz is way out of her league. However, Boaz notices Ruth, asks about her, and he is very impressed by her loyalty, her diligence, her work ethic. And so he kind of takes Ruth under his wing to protect her. Naomi's like, we're going to use that to our advantage. You need to seduce Boaz. Ruth does that. Anyways, basically, Boaz does end up marrying Ruth. They have a son. Their son is Obed, who is King David's grandfather, making Ruth an ancestor of Jesus. So the theme that we just keep seeing over and over and over again in the Old Testament is that the Lord keeps picking the most unlikely people, the most flawed people. They don't have perfect backgrounds. Ruth is literally an ex-pagan Moabite widow woman, like so unlikely. Boaz is related to that woman that the Israelites saved. Remember that story we read when they first came into Canaan? And there was that woman who owned a brothel. She saved the spies. So they were like, hey, hang this red flag out your window when we come to take your town and we will save you. Boaz is related to her. I think it might be her son. Anyways, like the most unlikely people. None of us are perfect. Nobody in the Bible that the Lord used was perfect. Far from it. Like Samson, we just read about Samson. He was so flawed, but the Lord still used him. The Lord did not give up on him. How often did the Israelites mess up in Judges? They kept doing it over and over and over and over again. Did the Lord give up on them? No, he showed them very tough love, but he did not give up on them despite their failings. Okay, anyways, let's talk about 1 Samuel really quickly. So 1 Samuel 1-3 is about Hannah. Now, Hannah is a very devout Levite woman. Remember, the Levites are in charge of the tabernacle. They're very holy. So Hannah is very devout. She's unable to have children. Her husband has 2 wives. The other one is able to have children and kind of gives Hannah a very hard time about it, but Hannah is the favorite wife. Anyways, so basically Hannah begs God for a son during her family's annual pilgrimage to the sanctuary. She tells the Lord that if he does give her a son, she will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life. So the Lord does in fact bless Hannah with a son, and that is Samuel. Hannah follows through on her promise to give Samuel to the Lord and drops him off basically with Eli the high priest. So Eli, the high priest, raises Samuel in service to God. He serves the tabernacle well, and God ends up calling on Samuel, which causes confusion because in this time, there's just not a lot of God talking to people. It's not like in Moses' day when God is having conversations with Moses like every single day. It's like doesn't really happen often anymore. And so when God calls to Samuel, Samuel's like, who's talking? So we end with Samuel being established as a prophet. We will continue on with Samuel next week. We will read 1 Samuel 4-20, Psalms 11 and 59, 1 Samuel 21-24, and then Psalms 7, 27, 31, 34, and 52. If you take anything from this week, let it be that you can never mess up so badly that God will give up on you. If he didn't give up on the Israelites, he's not going to give up on you. And he specializes in picking imperfect people to be a part of his plan. So God loves you because you're imperfect. Okay, see you next week. Love you. Bye.